Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. It's now 5 p.m. here in Fiji, and I believe it's 10 a.m. in Pakistan. A very warm welcome to all of you who are tuning in. Thank you for joining us in today's Top Talk with the Additional Secretary, Ministry of Industries and Production from Pakistan. My name is Ismail Tangida, and I'm the head of NPO Fiji and director of the National Training and Productivity Center of Fiji National University. Today, we have an exciting and timely topic, and I think this is very relevant to the global situation we are in regarding the impact of COVID-19. And different countries, whether large or small, in different continents, we are all coping in different ways. So first, let me thank Additional Secretary Nawaz. Thank you so much for giving us your valuable time today. Perhaps you would like to say a few words to our audience.
Good morning from Pakistan viewers. I wish every one of you peace, progress, and prosperity.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. Let me quickly introduce our honored speaker today. He is Mr. Saeed Ahmed Nawaz, Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Industries and Production and APO Alternate Director for Pakistan. Formerly, he has served in top positions in various departments of government of Punjab, which include Additional Secretary, Senior Member, Board of Revenue, Director General, National Institute of Management, and Secretary. He is Chairman of Pakistan Industrial Technical Assistance Center, National Productivity Organization, Industrial Facilitation Center. He's also a member of the Pakistan Industrial Development Corporation, the Fiji Fertilizer Company Limited, the Pakistan Stone Development Company, and the Gwadar Port Authority. He holds a master's degree in local eco-development from the London School of Economics, master's in business administration from the University of Punjab, and the Hubert H. Humphrey Fellowship from the Boston University in the USA. Our topic today is productivity and competitiveness strategies during COVID-19. Productivity and competitiveness are important drivers of economic growth. Early this year, COVID-19 came as a surprise and has affected our lives in myriad ways, and its impact is especially visible in the industrial sector. The majority of industries are finding it difficult to survive the challenges posed by the pandemic, resulting in disruptions of entire supply chains. After the presentation, there will be an interactive live question and answer session. Viewers, if you have any questions, please post them with your names and countries in the live chat box, and we will answer as many as time allows. So without any further ado, Additional Secretary Nawaz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Smiley, for a generous introduction. The scheme of my presentation is going to be, I've already been introduced, so I'll start with the introduction of Pakistan and NPO Pakistan. Next slide, please. Then general COVID-19 situation in Pakistan, preventive measures, sector-wise impact and opportunities we've been able to avail or we couldn't benefit from, and strategies adopted by Pakistan, initiatives and relief package, and finally the way forward. Next, please. Next. The full name of the country is Islamic Republic of Pakistan, and it's situated in South Asia. We have 1,046 kilometer equivalent to 650-mile coastline along the Arabian Sea and Gulf of Oman in the south. And Pakistan is bordered by India in the east, Afghanistan in the west, Iran to the southwest, and China in the northeast. Pakistan is fifth most populous country in the world with a population above 12 million. Pakistan is 33rd largest country by area, spread over 881,913 square kilometer which is equivalent to 340,509 square miles. Next slide, please. Next. Now, a few words about NPO Pakistan. The vision of NPO Pakistan is that we visualize Pakistan as an economically productive and globally competitive country. Our mission is to enhance total factor productivity in Pakistan through human resource development, technological demonstration, and improvement of practices, processes, and procedures by 2030. The birth of NPO Pakistan is coterminous with the birth of APO. APO was created as an interprovincial intergovernmental convention in Japan in 1961. Pakistan, being one of the 8 founding members, joined the organization at the time of its inception. Now, APO has 21 member countries in the Asia Pacific region. In 2006, NPO Pakistan was registered and incorporated under Section 42 of the Companies Ordinance 1984. And since its birth, it has been working under the umbrella of Ministry of Industries and Production for productivity enhancement in Pakistan. Next slide, please. Now, general COVID-19 situation in Pakistan. Next. The first case of COVID-19 was reported in Pakistan on February 26, 2020. Pakistan closed all its land borders for 15 days with effect from March 13, 2020. Confirmed cases started rising rapidly with effect from March 15, 2020. That's immediately with the closure of the borders. International flights were suspended on Saturday, March 21. And by March 23rd, 2020, above 870 cases were confirmed over the length and breadth of the country. Lockdown was announced and enforced the same day on Monday, March 23, and the number of confirmed cases jumped from 53 to 1078 during the period of March 15 to 25, 2020. Next slide, please. Next. Pakistan almost completely lifted nationwide lockdown on May 9, 2020. In the peak of the cases was observed on June 14, 2020 with 6,825 cases. That's in the follow-up of Eid al-Fitr, the ceremony, the event celebrated on the completion of holy month of Ramadan. So far, we have 265,083 confirmed cases reported. The number of deaths till 13th October is 5599. No, it was till July 2020. The tally reached 319,848 on October 13, 2020. That's the time when this presentation was finalized. And on October 10, we had 12 deaths, 666 confirmed cases against the 29,893 tests conducted on a single day. That's October 10, 2020. Educational institutions have opened progressively, starting with the university level on September 15th, 2020, obviously subject to certain standard operating procedures and observance of guidelines. Ever since, sporadic surges are being observed and smart lockdowns continue till this date. That's in hamlets and pockets of population. Life is back to a new normal. Next, please. This is a bird eye view of the situation of COVID-19 in Pakistan. This is a snapshot of October 13, 2020. We had confirmed cases of numbering 319,848. The number of confirmed cases for the day of 13th October was 531. Active cases were 8,651. Deaths till October 13 were 6,588. And recoveries were 3,04,609. Next, please. Next slide. This is the general pattern of COVID-19 in Pakistan. We hit our peak in June, and ever since the number of infection is on the decline. We reached a plateau in August, and now it's somewhat the trajectory is somewhat same since August 2020. Next, please. Next slide. Impact of COVID-19 on Pakistani economy. The real GDP growth estimated to have declined from 1.9% to minus 1.5% in the financial year ended on June 30, 2020. We had suffered or gone through restrictions on air travel, public transport, and social, industrial business gatherings. It closure of schools, industries, and non-essential businesses. It disrupted the domestic supply and demand. Businesses were unable to operate, and consumers restricted, rather curbed their expenditures. Next slide, please. Next. The services sector contracted by over 1%. Industrial production declined even more. If we were having high policy rates prior to the pandemic in double digits, but coupled with declining domestic and global demand thereafter, the situation further worsened. Our agriculture sector somehow remained insulated, and it modestly expanded over the year. Higher public spending were incurred to roll out fiscal stimulus package. Next, please. Issues faced by the industries and SMEs in Pakistan during the pandemic included employees' absenteeism, supply chain disruption at home as well as abroad, transportation was closed, there were financial constraints, specifically liquidity-related constraints, reduction in production was obvious, there was loss of sales and profits, there's a decrease in demand at home, but there's hardly any demand from abroad. And the industries have to incur additional expenditures on occupational safety and health, specifically related to the private personal protection equipments. Next, please. Since June, COVID-19 numbers have slowed down, but the protective measures are still on, and they included screening at the airports, wearing of obligatory masks in public places. There's a complete ban on large indoor social gatherings. And we are still continuing with the implementation of micro smart lockdown strategy. This may be a bit new for the viewers, so I'll explain it a bit further. So very small localities like building with multiple housing units are targeted. The targets include street level areas with more than 2 positive cases, and targeted instead of wider areas are locked down. Next slide. Sector-wise impact of COVID-19 in Pakistan. You can see the exports of Pakistan were doing fairly good during January and February. Even March was equally good, but we experienced a dip at the lowest during April 2020, and then they started picking up in May, did well in June, and the trajectory is still continuing. Next slide, please. This is the diagrammatic representation of the trends in exports. Next, please. Since Pakistani exports are concentrated in low-tech products, so there's hardly any change in technological component of Pakistan's exports over the last decade, and it continued the same way even during the pandemic. Next slide. Opportunities availed during COVID-19. Admittedly, evidently, Pakistan has an edge as far as production, manufacturing of personal protective gears is concerned. So we could have exploited this opportunity, but whatever little we could benefit from it included export of sanitizers increased by 47%, export of pharmaceuticals increased by 25% during the July to September period. Surgical and medical gloves were increased more by a percentage of 34, and it happened because of lockdown in Europe and US offered an opportunity to increase our exports to the exports destinations identified already. Export to EU increased by 4% and exports to US increased by 12% during the period from July to September 2020. Next, the opportunities which could not be availed. There was a worldwide increase in demand for personal protective equipment. Pakistan imposed a ban on the export of personal protective equipments. This was done because of the domestic dynamics. There was an opportunity to increase exports to the regional economy, specifically in the field of PPE. But on the contrary, exports to Afghanistan declined by 65% during March to June 2020. And this happened because of the lockdown and closure of the transport. Pakistan's exports started to increase after the implementation of China-Pakistan FTA 2 agreement signed in January 2020, but Pakistan could not utilize its market access to China due to COVID-19. Next, please. Strategies adopted and way forward. Next, please. The first and foremost strategy which was adopted was a trade-off between efficiency and resilience. During the COVID-19 period, it was a requirement for the industries and SMEs to stay afloat, survive, in order to exploit the opportunities likely to accrue in the future. So if they could stay afloat, survive, they'll be in a position to retain their old customers, acquire or win over new customers through quality goods and services during the pandemic. And relationships developed during difficult times, specifically the time like COVID-19, they last for life and may even go beyond generations. The second strategy adopted was protection of employees and information accuracy. Health and safety of the employees were the primary concern. Specifically, occupational safety and health issues were to be addressed, and it required extra expenditures on occupational safety and health hazards, expenditures on the personal protective equipment, expenditure on sanitizers, and observance of the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health, Pakistan. Secondly, information accuracy and responsible communication was critically important. The employees and workers in the industries and SMEs needed to be kept informed about the closures, working hours. If there was suspicion of some positive case or a confirmed case, it has to be widely disseminated, and accordingly protective measures, safeguards, safety protocols have to be invoked. So trust was a vital factor in the communication strategy, a responsible communication in between the employees and employers. The next was survival and economic boosting. Industries, businesses, and trade was required to continue in order to stay afloat, in order to survive. So online services, webinars, tele, video conferencing were introduced. That was the only way available in the difficult times Limited traveling was enforced to avoid exposure, multiple shifts, working on Saturdays and Sundays, social distancing, and observance of safety guidelines circulated, notified by the Ministry of Health vis-a-vis the personal protection were enforced, rigorously enforced. Next, please. Income and employment support. On the macro level, it was done by the government of Pakistan. On the micro level, it was done by the industrial units, businesses, and trade themselves. Financial assistance and other subsidies, specifically utility charges, for 3 months were waived off by the government of Pakistan for the SMEs, that's small and medium enterprises. Telecommuting and flexible working remotely were introduced by the industries wherever it was possible, specifically for the middle and higher management levels. Obviously, this was not possible for the people working on the factory floor or working with the machines. But in their case, social distancing and observance of safety measures were enforced. Exploring of new opportunities, diversification and out-of-box solutions were required in such a situation. Diversification meant that if they are producing textiles, they could switch to face masks. If they were distilleries, they could switch to sanitizers and things like that. The list is going to be unending. And for out-of-box solutions, self-dependence was the hallmark. As supply chain was disrupted, as demand was curbed, no external help was coming in, ports were closed. So in such a situation, the industries have to look inward, offer out-of-box solutions, diversify to stay afloat, and manage their affairs internally. This was even applicable at the country level because as far as health and personal equipment was concerned, electromedical equipment was not available anywhere from anywhere in the world. Same was the case for the PPEs. So a look inward strategy had to be adopted. Then cooperation with other firms, provision of common facilities, dependence upon each other was called for. Cluster culture was a way forward. Cooperative competitiveness. The industries, while they were cooperating with each other, they were competing with one another. So this was a way of staying afloat and surviving. Social dialogue between employees and CBAs. Instead of firing or terminating the services of the employees, retaining them during difficult times through a dialogue, even with a lesser level of wages, could develop a kind of organizational loyalty in between the employers and the employees. And planning and resilience capability, pre-planning for uncertainty and learning from the experience. So initially they had to pre-plan for the uncertainty ahead, how long the pandemic is likely to go, how long the close down will continue. And once they then started learning from their own experiences. They have to build their resilience capability because if they have no capacity to stand up after a fall, bounce back, then they'll find it, they may find it difficult to survive. And finally, positive employee relationship to enhance resilience during crisis. A gelling or a bond in between the employees and employers was critically important. Next, please. Economic relief strategies. Government of Pakistan announced a package of 1.13 trillion rupees, Pak rupees, that's equivalent to $6.76 billion to rescue and stimulate. 50 billion rupees were allocated for medical equipment. Testing capacity was enhanced from 30,000 to 280,000 with an ultimate target of 900,000. Special package was announced for construction sector. Monthly stipend being given through Benazir Income Support Program at the rate of Pakistan rupees 2,000 per month was enhanced to rupees 3,000 per month, extended to 5 million families. Then a one-time relief or one-time grant of rupees 12,000 per needy family was also provided under the banner of Benazir Income Support Program. Temporary economic refinance facility to fuel new investment was announced by State Bank of Pakistan to subsidize loans to the manufacturing sector, refinance facility to allow banks to get loans at zero markup. Hospitals were allowed to borrow at 3% for 5 years, reduced interest ratio to 11%, and an allocation of rupees 200 billion was made for technological upgradation and innovation support program. Next, please. Next, way forward. Restructuring of activities was a way forward to deal with any such like situation. And obviously, it barely and scarcely depends upon the adoption of the latest internet-based technologies or IT-enabled platforms. It includes digitalization. I prefer digitalization over digitization, e-marketing, knowledge economy, investment in healthcare and special protection. Then leadership in the industries have to be empowered to take immediate decisions. A shift is required in the beliefs of stakeholders consultation, wider consultations involving all the stakeholders, and will have to opt for a good and enough approach that instead of resorting into lengthy decision-making process, some kind of shortcutting will have to be resorted to. And finally, building of resilience. It includes pre-planning for uncertainties, retaining your core competencies, and look for opportunities as and when they arise. Thank you. That's all from my side.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nawaz. That was a very insightful presentation summarizing the effects of COVID-19 on industry and the productivity and competitiveness strategies adopted by the government of Pakistan to maintain the competitiveness of the sector during the pandemic. Your presentation and some key points you have raised have made me think about our situation here in Fiji, which is a much smaller country by population, geography, and economy than Pakistan. Nevertheless, we in Fiji have also developed similar strategies and coping mechanisms to mitigate the impact of the pandemic on industries in Fiji. You mentioned that Pakistan has over 300,000 cases with over 90% recovery rate, which is good news. You also talked about the real impact on the economy, where the real GDP growth declined from 1.9% to negative 1.5% this year. And this has been brought about by the stringent safety measures, such as restrictions in air travel, public transport, and public gatherings, and of course, disruptions in businesses. So I can share with you that for us in Fiji, a small economy that heavily relies on tourism, the impact has been dramatic with massive unemployment in the tourism and service sectors. Our national airline is on the brink of collapse and had to be rescued by the government. And many small businesses have closed or facing closures. So dependent sectors such as transport, agriculture, retail, and SMEs were affected. Our Fijian government also imposed restrictions in international air travel, social gatherings, and to date, we still have nightly curfews. But we are fortunate that due to the swift actions of our government, our infection numbers are comparatively much lower. But I can share with you the devastating impact of the pandemic on the Fijian economy is that the economy has contracted by 21.7%. That was the figure given to us by our Reserve Bank, with growth rate at negative 4.3% for the year. This comes after job losses and business closures from the pandemic. There is an estimated 33% of Fijian workers or workforce that either have lost their jobs or working on reduced hours. But a recent UNDP report stated that the impact in Fiji is felt more on marginalized and vulnerable groups, such as the elderly, women, children, the disabled, and the poor. And during our lockdown period, there was an increase in social problems, such as domestic violence and crime. And it was assumed that these were reactions to high unemployment and desperation as people were restricted from movements. So, Mr. Nawaz, I also noticed with interest your slides about the productivity and competitiveness strategy of Pakistan. And you raised an important point, which was resilience. And I can identify with that because in this new normal, people and industry have to be creative to survive. And I believe that resilience is the key. It seems that the government of Pakistan has a wide economic relief package, which you talked about very clearly. Some of these strategies are somewhat similar to the measures that are undertaken in Fiji. For example, the Fijian government abolished our stamp duty on all documents. We reduced and removed some taxes on close to 20 items, goods and services. So which made many goods, many products and services much cheaper for consumers this second half of the year. And this provided a small boost to the retail sector. Just like Pakistan, utilities payments were delayed and legislations have been changed in support of industry. So just like Pakistan, the Fijian government also provided relief allowances for people who have lost their jobs. At the same time, it has given loan packages for struggling businesses, especially SMEs, including subsidized marketing. In the initial stages, in the early months, the Fijian government came up with a $1 billion or US $500 million relief budget with emphasis on the health sector and industry to mitigate against the impact of the pandemic in Fiji. But as for us in the training sector, we had to quickly adjust to flexible online training. So online learning is more convenient for our industry stakeholders because workers, wherever they are located, could access trainings at any time. And this also contributes to sustainable productivity in Fiji. Mr. Nawaz, I noticed in your final slide, you talked about the way forward for improving competitiveness in Pakistan, and you emphasized on digitization, e-marketing, investment in healthcare, and the knowledge economy. These are quite similar to the recovery strategy that we are pursuing here in Fiji, where the emphasis has been on improvements in technology, industry, business subsidies, innovation, creativity, and one of the biggest things now is reskilling of people who have lost jobs. I am head of NPO Fiji, and one of the current work that we are doing right now is providing alternative pathways and skills to people so that they may pursue other career paths or maybe venture into entrepreneurship. And our government and local NGOs are providing funding for training and also for small business incubation. We have also realized that this is a critical time for both public and private sector, and we are pushing forward with our national productivity programs to assist all organizations to be more efficient, and also with their sustainability strategy. For us, we have a national productivity master plan, which the APO kindly assisted us with last year, which is actually a 15-year plan, and we are determined to see it through. So just like Pakistan, we in Fiji are also looking at things in new light. New opportunities have arisen. Food security is now actually better than ever, because people from all backgrounds all of a sudden turned to backyard gardening during our lockdown periods. So people are focused on poultry and dairy and farming. So now we have an abundance of fruits and vegetables and meat, and the prices have gone way down. Maybe I'll share that a popular system that arose out of the pandemic was the barter system, an old system that we used to have in the past, whereby people exchanged goods and services without money. So these are some of the creative, innovative new ideas that popped up because of the pandemic. And I would agree with you, Mr. Nawaz, that resilience is the key. So what we can say is that the economic impact of COVID-19 has been significant, especially on the industrial sector. It is important for industries to concentrate on improving their productivity and competitiveness to overcome losses due to the pandemic. In this era of rapid advances in technology, the only industries that will survive and prosper are those which accept new challenges and change to meet future demand. Viewers, if you have any questions for our additional Secretary Nawaz, please post them in the live chat box, and I'll ask them for you. So, Secretary Nawaz, let's get started with the questions. Well, the first one for you is that you have served in top positions in various government departments. In your opinion, which are the most difficult issues government leaders must deal with during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I'll be talking about the situation in Pakistan. The first and foremost problem faced by the people in government was a state of denial, a disbelief. The people were difficult to sensitize. They were not ready to believe that such a problem really exists until the virus spread virulently and the deaths started occurring. So to start with, it was really difficult to pursue or to make them believe that a real threat is knocking on their doors. They were not prepared to be cautious. They were not prepared to start taking the precaution, observing the precautions, adopt the guidelines. In such a situation, the public servants, the government functionaries were required to work in strenuous conditions. The working environment was very difficult to work in. The uncertainty about the spread and direction of the disease was again a major problem. We were not sure that what direction it's going to take, how it's going to spread, what's going to be the magnitude of the fatalities. So it was really difficult to preempt, pre-plan, or to be sure about what's going to happen in near future. Then we had a limited resource pool. and there were competing demands. So, what to allocate, whether to go for health or to take care of hunger was a big question we were faced with. If the economy was to kept afloat, we have to stave off hunger, then probably some compromise was called for on account of health measures. And finally, in the economic sector, the trade-off in between efficiency and resilience was a big question we were required to deal with. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nawaz. You really touched on some critical points there regarding the acceptance, the uncertainty regarding the information about the pandemic, the confusion that existed in the early stages, and of course you touched on the limited resources and how to determine where to divert the resources at the right time. So moving on, you have touched a little bit about on this. So what would you say are the most important steps taken by the government of Pakistan to keep industry alive during the pandemic?
The government announced a stimulus package worth rupees 1.2 trillion. That's 1,200 billion to help businesses during COVID-19, and that included relief to industry, daily wages, construction sector, in order to stimulate the economy. In detail, it included relief for daily wages at the rate of rupees 12,000 one-time dispensation for the laid off workers, cash transfers to low-income families under the banner of Benazir Income Support Program, alternate tax refunds for the accelerated tax refund for the export industry, financial support to support the agriculture sector and SMEs worth rupees 100 billion, accelerated procurement of wheat from the farmers, and efforts to streamline the distribution channels for the supply of wheat atta, financial support to the Utility Stores Corporation of Pakistan to provide subsidized essential commodities, including wheat flour, cooking oil, sugar, tea, and rupees 50 billion were provided or granted to the Utility Stores Corporation for the subsidized supply of food items. Then there was an emergency energy provision. Huge amounts worth rupees 50 billion were transferred to National Disaster Management Authority for the purchase of medicines and personal protective equipments to be immediately provided to the healthcare providers that included doctors, nurses, and paramedics. Government eliminated import duties on import of emergency health equipments, and monthly stipend of rupees 3,000, that's equivalent to $20, was provided to over 5 million people for 4 months. This is a snapshot of the measures taken by the provincial government to stimulate the economy and help the society sustain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. Thank you for sharing with us some of the important steps taken by the government of Pakistan. Now, the one issue that I would like to raise here is, different industries have different coping mechanisms when dealing with workers. And two of them are, flexible hours and working from home. So in your view, what are the common productivity pitfalls in working from home and flexi hours, both now and in general? Your experience from Pakistan.
As far as theoretical side is concerned, it sounds very good, very acceptable, adoptable, and flexible measure to be adopted by all and sundry. But once it comes to implementation, the one major problem is cultural adoption. We are not used to video conferences, we are not used to meetings online. So adoption was a major issue because of the cultural reluctance. Then there are certain real life issues which have to be dealt with. And the first and foremost was interference from the family members, kids during the working hours. So working from home involved dealing with the entire family instead of the work of a single individual. But it may not be true for the advanced world, but then disruption in the supply of internet, supply of electricity, problems related to technology, but the again major issues to be dealt with in case of Pakistan. Thirdly, difficulty in team communication. In physical meetings, conferences, consultations, you ensure that everybody, whosoever is required to join, is available for the meeting. But in case of our teleconferencing video meetings, it was really difficult to communicate with the entire team because of the technical problem, some kind of glitches on part of one member of the team or two or more members of the team. So it practically made it difficult to conduct the business through the internet conferences or the online links. And finally, if I'm working alone, sitting all by myself in a room for say for a long period of time, then feeling or sense of isolation is inevitable. And it causes fatigue. You cannot work in isolation for extended period of time. So man being a social animal needs some kind of communication, some kind of physical interaction with the fellow beings. A leading university, Lahore University of Management Sciences, uh, did a kind of trial. They invited 100 students, put them in different classes, and asked everybody to join the virtual class. This worked well, and maybe if the situation continues, this medium of instructions may be replicated by other levels, by other institutions, universities, colleges. God forbids if there's a surge or repeat of the situation we faced earlier. Thank you, Mr. Smedhi.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. I can really identify with those issues that you talked about regarding working from home and flexi hours. It's a new experience for us. So adopting, adapting, and you brought up the issue of monitoring of workers and worker output and productivity while people are working from home. And also the key point that you raised there was the technology, accessibility to technology and internet connectivity. And of course, I would agree with you that isolation, the sense of isolation when people adopting this new method of work. So going on to our next question, my next question, overall, how would you summarize the impact of COVID-19 on industrial growth in Pakistan?
First and foremost thing was the dual shock. We usually talk about supply shock, we talk about demand shock, but in case of COVID-19, it was a double shock, supply shock as well as demand shock. So during the outgoing year, the economy of Pakistan witnessed a contraction in economic activity, and most of the sectors have suffered due to the pandemic. The provisional GDP growth rate of financial year 2020 was negative. Agriculture showed a modest growth of 2.67%. Industrial sector declined by 2.64%, and there was a minimal growth of 0.59% in the services sector. The industrial sector in case of Pakistan comprises of large-scale manufacturing, small-scale manufacturing, construction, marine, and quarrying. Significant impact has been observed in the industrial sector particularly large-scale manufacturing and small-scale manufacturing. The industrial sector has shown a negative growth of a decline of minus 2.64%, predominantly due to the negative growth of 8.82% in mining and quarrying and decline of 7.8% in large-scale manufacturing sector. Due to lockdown situation, the country, the growth estimates of small industry, the small-scale industry that dominantly primarily consists of SMEs, a modest growth of 1.5% is expected, which is not a normal rate of growth. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Nawaz. I think over the last 2-3 questions have been focused on the national strategy in Pakistan. But let me bring it a little bit closer to your role. I mean, as a board member of leading public sector organizations, which strategies are being adopted to deal with COVID-19 situation and to continue efficient service delivery?
The first and most important thing is the stimulus package announced and implemented by the government of Pakistan. It's not only announcement, it has been implemented as well. Industries themselves are working hard to take care of their employees, stay afloat, survive during the difficult times, retain their core competencies, look for the opportunities, diversify, go for out-of-box solutions, and then grab the opportunities as and when they come their way. And in order to survive the difficult times, while they're required to spend a lot on the occupational safety and health, prevention of health hazards, the form of provision of personal protective equipment, sanitizers, tissue papers, ventilation, provision of face masks, blah, 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 not many things. So they're doing a lot to support their employees' physical and emotional well-being, just to develop long-lasting relationship and retain their human resource, retain their productive capacities. They're switching to the work from home model. Any of their employee, whoever can work from home, they gladly permit that employee or group of employees to work from home. They are encouraging employees to go for out-of-box solutions, provided their planning is aligned with the overall organizational strategy. So more leverage is available with the employees, starting from the floor manager or factory worker up the ladder of the chief to decide the way he or she wants to, as long as he stays within the four bounds of the four corners of the organizational strategy. Diversify working along with evolving conditions. Even the pandemic situation kept on evolving. A gradual rise, then sudden peak, then a drop, and then a plateau. Then the uncertainty attached to the disease. Say if somebody gets infected, he just sneezes or a little bit of cough and that's it. The person develops the antibodies and is safe from the disease, at least for the time being, as long as some different strain of the virus is introduced in the population. But for a few, they land up on ventilation or maybe death is the destination. So diversification in the face of the evolving conditions, in the face of evolving trends, is again a strategy being adopted by the factories and the industries and the clusters. And the overarching feature of this entire situation is the compliance of government SOPs and guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health. So there's a need for sound implementation of their strategies subject to overall umbrella of the guidelines of the protective measures recommended and enforced by the government of Pakistan. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. I think the good points that you've shared with us regarding the changing conditions, the diversification and heavy investment in personal protective equipment, OHS safety issues, and the provision of additional emotional support and counseling for workers. So moving on to my next question, can you give us an overview of the current economy of Pakistan? For example, which industries are thriving, which sectors are growing, etc.
We had a GDP growth projection of 3.3% for the current financial year, but it has dropped to minus 0.38%. This is from the Economic Survey of Pakistan. IMF projected the growth, projected Pakistan's pre-COVID growth of 2.4%. But according to the Bretton Woods institutions, it has gone down to minus 1.5%. IMF predicted a V-shaped recovery in 2021 and forecasted a GDP growth of 2% for the next fiscal year that's going to end up in June 30, 2021. As far as negative impact of the pandemic is concerned, tourism, entertainment, retail goods, luxury goods, aviation, real estate, coal, oil and gas, automotive have experienced a slowdown due to the social restrictions, price fluctuations, lockdowns, and shutdowns, and above all, the demand shock and the supply side restrictions. The industries which performed a little bit better and they've been able to avail the growth opportunities included IT and IT-enabled services, e-commerce, health technologies, education technologies, pharmaceuticals, surgical and medical equipment. Textile sector is a beneficiary in a bit different way. While the mainstream textiles badly suffered, they were able to diversify and enter into the domain of the production of personal protective equipments. So they benefited indirectly because of the pandemic and managed to perform moderately well. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. Well, our viewers have sent some questions. So let me ask the first question from our viewer. This is from John Xavier. And his question is, what were the areas that Pakistan's fiscal stimulus directed at? What has been the impact on economic recovery and employment?
Well, the stimulus was directed at the very survival of the people who had gone down the poverty line. Government immediately arranged to provide financial support to the 5 million families which were surviving on the poverty line, and a good number of the laborers, the industrial workers, which were above the poverty line, but because of the pandemic, they fell below the poverty line. So a direct financial support was provided to them to arrange for their survival during the difficult times. and stay afloat. Then certain measures were taken by the State Bank of Pakistan to keep the industries afloat. And that included temporary economic refinance facility, SBP Rozgar scheme, that was provision of soft loans to the individuals for self-employment, then loan principal extension and markup restructuring package for the industries, refinance facility to combat COVID-19 that was again targeted at industries, promotion of digital payments. It was in a way an indirect benefit, rather direct benefit of the pandemic, that the people, the industries, the businesses, the trade and communities were forced to resort to e-banking and e-commerce. And State Bank of Pakistan played a lead role in promotion of the digital payments. Then credit requirements for exporters and importers were also relaxed. And as far as the import of technological equipment, medical related supplies was concerned, they were exempted from every possible kind of taxation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. We have another question here. This is from the East-West Info Solution in New Delhi. And the question is, how does the CPEC project boost Pakistan's economy after COVID-19?
CPEC, as the name indicates, it's China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. So economic corridor doesn't mean that it's only a trade route. It involves whole set of economic activities. So once a route in between China and rest of the world is operationalized, the trade of China starts routing through Pakistan and Pakistan's port of Gwadar with the rest of the world. So it has to benefit the economy of Pakistan as well. And en route, certain economic zones are planned to be set up, certain export processing zones are planned to be set up. And we expect that some kind of manufacturing and value addition is a must. If China has to import, obviously they cannot take everything in bulk from the port of Gwadar up mainland China. They will have to do some kind of processing in the area of Gwadar, condense value add the products and then take them to mainland China. Similarly, if they want to export finished goods, they have to be at least assembled closer to the port and then exported to the rest of the world. So this is a win-win situation. It will not only benefit China, it's going to benefit the economy of Pakistan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nawaz. Well, we have many questions are coming in, so I'll ask you another one. This is from Yash Sami. And the question is, in the process of recovery and reorganizing ourselves with flexible work options, growing dependency on digital communication, should companies now prioritize mental health as part of wellness?
The straight answer is yes. Obviously, it's once we resort to flexible working hours, we resort to working from home, teleconferencing. So the dependence on IT-enabled technologies is going to increase multifold. As I've already mentioned, that it involves a kind of physical isolation. So some measures will have to be adopted, initially developed, then adopted and implemented to safeguard against the physical loneliness which comes through the adoption of the flexible working and working from home. And we'll have to deal with the disruptions that I already talked about, from the family, failures of the internet, problems resulted with the power supply, and issues like that. Psychological treatment or the psychological relief which comes because of the working through the virtual world. Definitely, it takes the center stage as far as the individual worker is concerned, and it requires and necessitates some kind of measures to provide relief, pacify, or address the sense of isolation that that very individual or the worker is going to face with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nawaz. This is another question. I think we have time for one more question from our viewers. This is from Junaid Khan. And the question is, please explain what most Pakistanis in good government offices and positions can do to help other Pakistanis in this moment of crisis. And I think the emphasis here is, and what has your office done for the Pakistanis in this regard?
My one word answer is empathy, feeling the pain of others. And as far as my own office is concerned, we were working, if not round the clock, till late night when the peak of pandemic was being observed in Islamabad and rest of the country. So we used to come before the notified office hours and we used to continue sitting till late. And the reason was the relief packages for the industry, for the laid off workers, were being administered by the Ministry of Industry and Production in collaboration with the Benazir Income Support Program, or Poverty and Social Security Division of Government of Pakistan. So as far as my person, my ministry, my secretary, my minister, and officers and staff working with me are concerned, we did our best to provide the relief to our fellow Pakistanis, specifically the people in the industries and labor sector, to the best of our capabilities. If I am to evaluate that we have done enough or we have come up the expectations or we have done all, probably not. But whatever within the limited resource pool available at our disposal and our capabilities was possible, we tried our best to do. Thank you.
So, Mr. Nawaz, what would you say is the contribution of the industrial sector to Pakistan's GDP? Was manufacturing hit harder than other sectors by COVID-19?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's not only the supply chain disruption, it's the curb demand as well. As far as the demand for industrial products or the manufactured goods is concerned, the people withheld their demand, curbed their demand, restricted, limited it because of the uncertainties prevalent due to the spread of COVID-19. So on one hand, the global supply chain, the domestic supply chain was disturbed. The labor was not coming to attend or to run the machine. On the other hand, no demand was there. If they could surmount all the difficulties or the problems, bottlenecks, there was hardly any demand for certain goods. So they were left with no option but to diversify. And some of the industries did well as far as diversification into the similar products was concerned, and which were demanded in the domestic as well as global market. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me very quickly touch on MSMEs, because crises like the current pandemic always affect MSMEs more than the bigger enterprises. So do you think that Pakistan's MSMEs have recovered to some extent?
The answer is a qualified yes, a qualified no. They are back to business. They were provided a relief package in the form of their electricity bills for 3 months. They were allowed credit facilities under various programs of State Bank of Pakistan. And obviously, they could pool from their own social capital. Then the tradition of helping each other is very common and prevalent in our society. So, banking upon all their resources, they're back to business. They have started working. If not optimally, they're doing fairly well at this point in time. But are they back to normal? It needs a lot of research And right now, I'm not in a position to say an absolute yes, but they're back to business. They're working and going to uh, business as usual in a short term tenure of time.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, let me very quickly talk about how the pandemic has disrupted supply chains worldwide. What are the major disruptions that are seen in the supply chains in Pakistan, especially those affecting the industrial sector?
Our industrial sector was badly hit because of the disruption of supply chain from China. Most of the, if not most, a good number of industries were dependent upon intermediary goods supplied by China. And once the supply chain from China was disrupted, so the industries faced really tough or difficult situation to continue working. And Pakistan is probably 20th in the list of the countries badly and adversely affected because of the disruption of supply chain from supply of intermediary goods from China. And if I'm to quote a figure, it's something like 44 million US dollars. India is obviously well ahead of us with a loss of 348 million. Turkey is 425 million. And it resulted from a 2% reduction of China's export of intermediary inputs. For a pretty longer period of time, starting from last week of March till mid-May, our ports remained closed. There was hardly any air transport taking place except for the receipt or supply of the medical equipments. So the entire supply chain globally stayed disrupted during this period of time. And as far as Europe is one of our export destinations, as far as our exports to Europe were concerned, they were badly affected because of the COVID-19, because besides United States of America, Europe was probably one of the worst hit region as far as spread of the COVID was concerned. So our industries faced disruption of global domestic supply chain as well as disruption of demand. Thank you.
Thank you. I noticed in your one of your slides that there was a decline in total exports from February to April, but that there's a sudden turnaround with increases to the month of June. So is that directly related to the injection of government stimulus, or are there other factors?
But honestly, it's very difficult to respond. There could be host of factors. So stimulus from the government is one of the factors, but disaggregating that with what is the most important or the leading factor for this resurgence, it's really difficult to determine or predict at this point in time.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Nawaz. Let me move to my final question for you, and that is, what is the most important lesson we should learn from this pandemic?
The most important lesson, in my view, is to put our guards on, stay alert, and never take the natural calamities lightly. We have faced the pandemic in the form of, say, SARS, in the form of bird flu, Congo virus, and many others. But this one is very unique in nature. Its spread is unpredictable, its outcome is unpredictable, how it's going to behave is unpredictable, and it has been around since 2019, and so far no solution, no agreed upon remedy or medicine has been prescribed to deal with this problem. No vaccine has been available till this point in time. Before the advent of COVID-19, we were thinking that if there's a disease, there's a solution or cure available, at least in the developed world, or at least to the affording people or the elites, even in the developing and underdeveloped world. But this has negated all those beliefs. So we should never be complacent about uncertainty as far as natural calamity is concerned, and should never lower our guards. It can hit in any manner, it can lead to any outcomes. So complacency is the most dangerous thing we must be cautious about, we must guard against. Secondly, pre-planning against the uncertainty. An uncertain situation, a natural calamity, can hit us in any form. So we have to pre-plan to deal with that kind of emergency, that kind of exigency, that kind of pandemic, disease, or natural calamity in any other form. So we have to pre-plan to deal with the uncertainties associated with the natural calamities. And thirdly, resilience. We have to plan for resilience, how to storm the weather, how to face the difficulties, stay afloat, sustain ourselves, retain our core competencies, retain productive capacities, human capital, social capital, whatever it is, and then wait for the good day, wait for the opportunities as they fall our way, and be ready to exploit the opportunities in future. Thank you.
Very well said, Mr. Nawaz. And I noticed that we have questions still coming in for you. Unfortunately, due to the limitations of time, we will not be able to address them live, but I think we'll be able to address them through the private chat later after this live session. So, Additional Secretary Nawaz, thank you so much for giving us your insights over the past hour. Our viewers in APO member countries and beyond have gained a lot from this session. Before this Top Talk is over, do you have any final thoughts for our viewers?
Stay safe, stay home. If it's inevitable, I wish them again peace, progress, and prosperity. Thank you, Dr. Smith.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you here today, Additional Secretary Nawaz. Viewers, thank you for joining us today, and I hope that you learned a lot from this Top Talk. Please stay safe, everyone, and thanks for tuning in.